The rain had been falling since dawn, heavy and relentless, turning the dirt road of Hollow Creek into a river of brown mire. The town gathered in spite of it, hats dripping, boots sinking, faces tight with curiosity and hunger for spectacle. 3 girls stood barefoot upon wooden crates in the middle of the street, each holding a piece of cardboard scrawled with their worth. The eldest read $1 only. The younger 2 bore 50 cents. Their dresses were once white, but now clung wet and torn against their skin, mud streaking their calves, hair plastered dark against their cheeks. Silence hung for a moment, the kind of silence that burns more than noise, until the laughter began. Clara Mayfield, the eldest, held her sign steady, though her hands trembled. Her jaw was set, eyes straight ahead, refusing to give the crowd the satisfaction of her tears. Beside her, Lydia squeezed Rose's hand so tightly that the younger sister winced but didn't pull away. Behind them stood their father, Silas Mayfield, drunk and bitter, his hat low, his voice rasping through the rain. Better sold than starved, he muttered to no one in particular, though he wanted the whole town to hear it. His farm was gone, his pride gone with it, and now he bartered away his last inheritance, his blood. The men jeered, tossing coins in the mud as if testing weight before cattle sale. $1? Too steep for that one, someone shouted. Half's more than she's worth, another barked. Each word sliced deeper, but Clara's eyes did not falter. She felt Lydia trembling, Rose trying to disappear inside herself, and she willed herself to stand taller, even as her wet hem shredded against the crate's splinters. The bidding began, crude voices calling out numbers that cut through the rain. Silas smirked bitterly, pocketing coins, nodding like a merchant. But then the crowd hushed, as a figure broke from the ring of onlookers. Jonas Carter was not a man given to spectacle. His frame was tall, shoulders broad from years of ranch work, his face lined by wind and sun, but it was his eyes, still, dark, carrying a weight heavier than any coin, that quieted the mob. He walked through the mud without hurry, boots sinking but steady, until he stood before the girls. He did not speak to Silas, nor to the crowd. Instead, he reached into his coat, drew out a pouch, and let a handful of silver fall into Silas's palm. The clatter was louder than the laughter had been. That's enough for all 3, Jonas said, voice even, low as thunder far off in the hills. They come with me now. No one dared laugh then. Even Silas, greedy as he was, seemed momentarily unsettled, but greed won quickly. He snatched the coins, spat into the mud, and turned away. The crowd parted as Jonas laid his hand gently on Clara's shoulder, guiding her down from the crate. Lydia and Rose followed, unsure, clutching each other. Murmurs rippled like wind through wheat, but no man stepped forward to contest him. The wagon waited at the edge of town, its wheels already half sunken in muck. Jonas lifted Rose onto the seat, then helped Lydia and Clara climb. The horses stamped, impatient. Sir, Lydia asked, voice so faint it almost vanished in the rain. Where are you taking us? Jonas gathered the reins, his gaze fixed on the long road ahead. To my land. You'll have food, shelter. No man in my house will treat you as less than God's own. His words were few, but they carried weight, and for the first time that day, the sisters felt a strange pause in their fear. Not safety yet, but the faintest breath of something like it. The road stretched endless beneath the storm. The girls sat in silence, wrapped in their thoughts. Clara stole a glance at Jonas. His jaw was strong, but his eyes softened when they met hers. She turned away quickly, ashamed of the flicker of relief she felt. Lydia wrapped her arms around Rose, whispering comfort. The wagon wheels creaked, the horses snorted, and the rain drummed steady on the canvas. When they reached the Carter Ranch, the sisters saw a house built plain but solid, smoke curling from its chimney. Jonas's 3 sons came out to meet them. Caleb, the eldest, broad-shouldered with a scar across his brow, nodded solemnly. Eli, kind-eyed and steady, offered his hand without a word. Micah, the youngest, sharp-tongued but quick with a crooked grin, smirked as if unsure whether to jest or welcome. Jonas spoke plainly. These are my sons, Caleb, Eli, Micah. You'll wed them, not as burdens, but as wives with dignity. No shame in my land." His voice left no room for mockery, yet the words struck the sisters like a second blow. Marriage felt like another chain. Clara's throat tightened, but before she could speak, Jonas added, "Softer now. Choice remains yours. My house is not a cage." That night they all sat by the fire, awkward as strangers on a stage. Lydia kept close to Rose, who would not raise her eyes from her lap. Clara sat across from Caleb, the firelight dancing on his scar, and though he did not speak, he draped his coat across her shoulders when the wind slipped in. Eli handed Lydia a plate of bread, his fingers brushing hers with quiet reverence. Micah caught Rose's eye and, seeing her mud-caked feet, whispered, "Chickens look tidier," a clumsy jest that somehow drew the faintest twitch of a smile from her. The fire popped, the storm beat on the roof, and for a long time, no one spoke. Yet in that silence, something fragile took root, something the jeers of the town could not reach. Clara lay awake later, staring at the rafters above her, replaying the echo of the crowd's laughter. But she also remembered the weight of Jonas's hand, steady on her shoulder, and the warmth of the coat still wrapped around her. She thought, perhaps salvation doesn't arrive in thunder, but in the quiet of a man who refuses to laugh. The weeks that followed were heavy with silence, the kind that pressed against the ribs and made each breath feel like a confession. The town did not forget the spectacle. Whispers clung to the sisters like burrs in their hair. Jonas Carter bought himself 3 brides, cheaper than a mule. Clara could feel the weight of every sideways glance when she walked into town, though she kept her chin high. Lydia clung to Eli's quiet presence, though neither dared call it comfort yet. Rose, restless and young, fought between shame and a stubborn yearning to laugh again, to breathe like a girl unbroken. Life on the Carter ranch moved with the rhythm of work. At first the sisters shrank from it, still brittle with the memory of crates and rain. But little by little, the patterns of labor stitched them into the land. Caleb led Clara to the corral one morning, wordless as always, and saddled a horse for her. She had never ridden. The first time she climbed, awkward and trembling, he stood at her side, steady as the animal itself. His hands brushed hers only when needed, guiding the reins, but his silence was its own strange kindness. When she slid down, breathless, mud splattering her dress, she caught him watching her, not with hunger, but with something that felt almost like respect. Lydia found herself at the fence line with Eli more often than not. He was patient, showing her how to wind wire, how to brace posts. His voice was soft, steady as the earth. Once, when she cursed softly as a splinter pricked her skin, he reached for her hand without hesitation, pulling the thorn free. His touch lingered a heartbeat longer than necessary, and in that stillness, something shifted inside her, like a door she hadn't known was locked creaking open. Rose was drawn to Micah, though she would not admit it. He teased her as she scattered feed for the chickens, mocking her serious face until she broke into laughter. It startled her, that sound, bright and unguarded, as if it had been buried beneath months of silence. Micah blushed red, hiding it with another joke, but his eyes softened. Each day she left a wildflower at the barn door, and each day he found it, grinning as if it were the world's greatest secret. Yet for all these small mercies, the weight of the town's judgment hung heavy. At church, heads turned. In the mercantile, women whispered behind their hands. Clara overheard it once, sharp as a knife. Better they drowned than lived as Carter brides. She said nothing, but the words followed her back to the ranch, staining her silence. Jonas bore it with the patience of stone. "A man's house is his to govern," he told them one evening, his voice even. "Mine is ruled by dignity. Don't you bow to another's scorn." His words settled deep, though the sisters were not yet sure how to wear them. In the quiet nights, connections deepened. Clara found Caleb in the barn carving a small wooden horse. His scarred hands worked the blade with surprising gentleness. When he caught her watching, he hesitated, then held it out, rough edges and all. She took it, her fingers brushing his, and though no words passed between them, she felt her throat tighten with a warmth she had not known in months. Lydia once overheard Eli praying softly, his voice breaking as he asked for strength to heal what was broken. She pressed her palm against the wall, tears stinging her eyes, wishing she could tell him he was already an answer. Rose slipped a daisy into Micah's hat one morning. When he discovered it, he chased her laughing across the yard, his voice light, her laughter ringing through the hills. But healing rarely comes without reckoning. One afternoon, the past rode back into their lives. Silas Mayfield, staggering from his horse, fury and whiskey dripping from every word. The sisters froze as he stormed in the yard, face flushed, fists clenched. "You think you can steal what's mine?" He spat at Jonas. "They were my daughters to sell, not yours to keep." The ranch grew still. The Carter sons stepped forward, Caleb at the front, his stance like a wall. Jonas's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of mountains. "You lost that right the day you put a price on them. No man owns what God made free." Silas's eyes blazed. He lunged at Clara, his hand striking her cheek. The crack split the air like gunfire. Rose screamed. Lydia rushed forward, but Caleb was quicker. He seized Silas by the collar, shoving him back with a force that rattled the man's bones. For a moment, the yard brimmed with violence. Micah's fists clenched, Eli's face white with fury. The crowd had gathered at the fence, drawn by gossip, hungry for another spectacle. Clara's voice broke the storm. She stepped forward, her cheek burning, her eyes aflame. "We are not cattle," she said, her voice ringing clear. "We are not shame. We are Mayfields no longer. We are Carters now." The words carried like a bell across the yard. Silas faltered, his rage dissolving into something hollow. He looked at the daughters he had sold, saw the strength in their stances, the quiet fire in their eyes, and he understood he no longer had power here. With a bitter curse, he turned and staggered away, his shadow shrinking as he rode out into the dusk. The silence left behind was heavy, but different now. The crowd that had gathered did not laugh this time. They shifted, murmured, some lowering their eyes in shame. Jonas stood, his rifle resting but unused, and his voice, steady as oak, closed a moment. "This ends here. No man owns what God made free." In the weeks that followed, the ranch bloomed not just with crops, but with laughter. Clara and Caleb worked side by side, their silences filled with understanding, until one morning she found herself smiling at him without fear. Lydia and Eli mended fences together, his steady hand always near hers, their bond woven in quiet prayers and gentle patience. Rose and Micah tumbled through the yard chasing chickens, their laughter music that turned neighbors' heads but could not be silenced. At harvest, the Carters laid a long table beneath the autumn sky. Bread, stew, roasted corn, apples shining in the lamplight. Jonas sat at the head, his sons beside him, and the three sisters, no longer trembling, no longer ashamed, sat with pride. They were no longer possessions. They were wives, partners, women with dignity earned not by coins, but by the daily choosing of one another. And so the tale closed not with thunder, but with warmth, the warmth of hands passing bread, of eyes meeting without fear, of laughter floating across fields once heavy with sorrow. Perhaps that is the quiet miracle of love, not the fire of sudden passion, but the slow glow of a hearth built stick by stick, flame by flame. In a town that tried to turn women into currency, three sisters found a home where worth was measured not in gold, but in grace. And if you carry this story with you, dear soul, let be this: dignity is not given by the world. It is claimed day by day in the small, unyielding act of choosing to stand, to heal, to be free.